Hey guys, what it do? It's absolutely beast here. That did not sound right from the moment I said it. What's up guys, bringing you today a longer race. So this is the new Rivals event on Road America. I don't know why, I mean, it's cool that it's Road America, but I really just wanted to drive this RXC Turbo, this Radical RXC. The Radical SR8 was not my favorite car. In Forza Motorsport 6, I didn't really like driving it, and there were a lot of tracks that I had to drive it on in order to be competitive, and I didn't like it. So this is just a fun one to do. It's one of the new Rivals events that I mentioned yesterday in my video, and this just seemed like a real fun track to race. So that's what I'm bringing you, and this is an unfiltered look at it. There are two edits in the video. One, I lost some time of recording, which I'm so grateful that the full-length recording is going to go live within the next day or two for me. In rumor, at least, that the update should be out where I'm able to record up to an hour, because that's going to make things so much easier. And then, of course, you know, PC is being built, so that'll make things even 10 times easier still. So I lost about 30 seconds in one of the first transitions around the 10-minute mark, and then I lost, and then I did pause and unpause again later in the video. So there's two edits, but otherwise this is an unfiltered look. I just wanted to give you guys sort of an idea of, you know, how long it takes in order to break a time, because, you know, you can race and know a track super well and know a car super well, but what it really comes down to is the repetition all at once. So I've said this before, but if you raced, you know, 5 races on a track and they were 2 laps each, you wouldn't be as familiar with the track as you would be if you raced 10 laps all at once. And so yeah, I mean, doing the repetition over and over and over again builds up that muscle memory, and it gets you really in a zone where you really know how hard you can push a car through a corner. And again, even if you know a car super well, just even in these track conditions, especially since everything's dynamic, just at the different time of day and stuff like that, you can really mess around with how hard to push the car and stuff. And so what I want you guys to pay attention to is every lap that I race, I'm racing against the Ghost, and the racing against the Ghost is a critical part of getting better, because you can literally see shift by shift what's happening to the car in front of you. So every time I start the lap right here, which is right here, you're going to see my the Ghost I'm racing against, which is Killer Spoon. He's an absolute animal, and he must not have raced this track too much in this car, because I shouldn't be beating him. He's way better than me. So basically you can see right there, he starts to pull away from me. So that means that I broke too much and didn't carry enough speed out of the turn. And then this one, same thing, you see him pulling away, so that means I really butchered that turn. Now, the other variable here is the shifting, which I've talked about before, and it's really throwing me for a loop. I'm so used to shifting really late, like right before the rev limiter, and it's really impacting my driving performance. So I really tried later on in the race to shift earlier and earlier. But it's extremely critical that you race against a Ghost and somebody who's close to you in time, because even like right now, like even now that's probably a 3/4 of a second he is ahead of me, but he's so far ahead of me that I actually can't tell anymore how I'm doing. So if I take a bad turn, I can't really tell, because, you know, as you see, my split is positive up there in the upper right, and he's just pulling away. So it's very, very hard for me to tell exactly how well I'm doing, especially since I'm not familiar with this car at all. This is the first time I've driven it. So it's extremely important that you race against somebody who's within about a half second of you, you know, 0.5 seconds, in order to really get an idea of how well you're doing, because that gives you a comparison. And I mean, I didn't used to like the Rivals very much, but the first time I raced, when I was testing out a tune, the first time I raced of my tune that I made on Forza 5, first time I tested out the tune, just running through the gears as fast as possible, taking a turn just like I normally did, and nailed the turn. And as we started to pull out of the turn, the guy just pulled away from me. And so in that moment, I realized, okay, my gearbox isn't up to snuff here, because he's pulling away from me, even though I'm going as fast as I possibly can. He's pulling away from me, so that's how I knew. And so yeah, like I said, just pay attention to the start of every one of these laps. I don't know exactly how many laps I do. They're 2 minutes, so it's probably like 8 or 9 laps. But at the start of every one of these, I'll basically be even with him like this. And then you can see, you know, and basically every time I get a little bit better and a little bit better. And I was going to cut the video off at 15 minutes, but then I decided to keep racing, and I actually ended up beating his time just ever so slightly. So I'm glad I did that. So as you see there, again, terrible turn. And I come in here, and it's another not good turn. The back was a little bit loose on this guy, so it was taking a little bit of getting used to for me. I'm used to the cars being a little more planted. But this thing is awesome, man. I love driving this thing. It sounds good. It handles really well. I love the look of it. Honestly, that's the reason I didn't like the Radical in the previous game, the SR8. Not only was the tune that I used kind of bad, but I just didn't like the look of it at all. It was like an open top type car. It kind of looked like those Audi Le Mans cars from the mid-2000s, which I just did not like the look of. But yeah, this thing's awesome, man. I love that spoiler. I'm a huge fan of these type of spoilers, like actual functional big motorsport type spoilers. Absolutely love those. I mean, they're just so epic. So anyway, yeah, like I said, I want to bring you this because it's really a testament of what you have to do in order to beat a time. Now, this would be like the minimum that I race. If I'm trying to beat a time, especially racing against him, I had no idea what times I was going to be able to pull out. And so for these first several laps, I mean, look how far ahead of me he is. He's way ahead. So I was thinking, you know, man, and that turn's a real hard one to get in this car. But just the first few laps, I was really thinking, like, man, he's really far ahead of me. Like, I don't know that I'll be able to beat him, but slowly but surely, lap by lap, I ended up getting closer and closer and closer. And then on a couple of the laps, I actually pull ahead of him on the first turn. And so that's just kind of why I was saying, you know, pay attention at the beginning of every lap, because that's where I'm right even with the Ghost. And that's how you can tell, because that turn's really tough to figure out too. And that one, that's something that's happened to me a couple times now. It seems like if I take a break from racing, which I did, I haven't raced for a few days, or almost a week actually. Sometimes that happens where I'm like going through a turn and I'm so like white knuckling the controller and I'm squeezing it so tight, I actually end up squeezing the left bumper without realizing it, and that is my handbrake. So that's kind of unfortunate. But yeah, so you'll see here, I mean, I was way behind him, but then I actually end up coming up and I actually passed him. See how fast that turn was? I actually pulled ahead of him. And I was way behind him at the first turn. So then I kind of started panicking a little bit, and you can see me sliding a little bit on this one, and I go a little bit too deep. But see, right here is where I really, you see how I wound out the car all the way, and he starts pulling away from me? That's where I really realized, okay, this shifting thing is serious. I really have to start shifting earlier. Because right there, I was ahead of him going into the turn, and I'm on the gas at basically the same time he is, but he's pulling away from me. So I know in that case that it's shifting, especially since there's no tunes allowed in here. So I definitely know in that case that he's shifting at a more optimum point than I am, which for me leads me to believe I need to start shifting earlier. And so that's kind of the beginning of the end. So these first 3-4 laps, not really doing much. But as you see, I'm a full second right there. If you look at that blue split, I'm a full second ahead of my best so far. And at this point, I was like, all right, dude, I realize this. And that's even messing up at the end of that lap. That last lap, so I had to start basically from a dead stop, which lost me speed, and he ended up pulling way ahead of me on the straightaway right after the start because of it. And right there I had to lift off the gas a little bit, and then I started sliding. So, I mean, I don't know, it's tough, you know, when you're used to cars with downforce, sometimes it's tough to predict how these cars are going to react, and although this car does have downforce, it just doesn't quite have enough right there, or it's just not heavy enough to kind of make it work, and right there I dirtied the lap, unfortunately. So just real quick while we're in the middle of this race here, there was a letter, this was a quote, letter to the Forza community, which is from the Turn 10 studio head. His name's Alan Hartman. And even though this is dated on October 3rd, which is very interesting because it's posted after all the rest of the stuff, but it's something that I didn't touch on yesterday. So see, now I'm even with him. And this is from better shifting, and because I took that last turn the right way. And I just got too aggressive on that one, took too much of an inside line, and now he's going to be gone. So that's just something that I've talked about before. Because that whole thing's a really long straight, if I don't nail that last turn, the turn where I spun out last lap, if I don't nail that turn, then I actually lose time down the entire straight, and his Ghost will pull away from me down the entire straight. And so, you know, it's critically important that I nail it just perfect coming out of the last lap to start the new lap. And that's just something that, you know, you end up running into when you're doing this. So, so anyway, it's dated Tuesday the 3rd, October 3rd, which is weird because it's posted on the website, ForzaMotorsport.com or .net after the thing that I touched on yesterday. But I'm just going to summarize it real quick. So, just since Forza 7 launched into early access last week, which again, this is, I guess it's 2 weeks old, which is strange. It says, everyone here at Turn 10 has been keeping a close eye on our players' feedback. The most important thing is that they maintain open communication with us. They've heard what we have to say, and see, there was the first cut right there. And it says we can expect some significant changes. So see, again, I'm even with him. And let's see how good this one is. See, kind of a good entry line, but I ended up oversteering because I got too aggressive on the gas and took too hard of an inside line, and now he's way ahead. Which, it's very frustrating, but the whole point is, you can't give up. That's why I ended up racing 18 minutes, and like I said, that's kind of the minimum. I'm sort of easing back into it because I don't want to end up where I was a few weeks ago, especially after all the time I just had to recover. Basically, I don't want to mess things up again. So, but that's the important thing. I was getting a little bit frustrated sometimes with it, but as you see, as you go lap by lap, I'm getting better and better and better, and closer, and I'm shaving off more and more time, and then I end up finally beating him on the last lap when I decided to call it quits. And I'm glad I raced another couple of laps, another 2-3 laps, because I hadn't beaten him, and I was a little bit discouraged, and I slid out again. I ended up actually bumping the e-brake again and sliding out on that same corner in another lap or two, and I got a little bit discouraged there again. But I thought, what, I'm just going to keep going with it. I feel like I can do it. So this turn right here is a little bit tough. It's always been a tougher one. But this right-hander, though, this is one of my favorite turns in all of Forza racing right here, and I just couldn't quite get it. That one I did. And see, I can tell I took it right because on the exit, I'm coming far left toward that rumble strip. If you don't take it right, then you're not going to, with enough speed, then you're not going to come out on that side of the turn, and then you know that you didn't quite carry enough speed through there. So that's sort of the way I gauge it for me. And then that one, that's a tough turn too. I mean, really, these are all tough turns. There's no real easy turns. And so this is, and see, there it was again. Same thing again, which is so ridiculous. So now what I'm doing is I've already lost like 40, 50 miles an hour. So what you'll see is, even with my earlier shifting that I've been doing, once I get to the starting line, he's going to be pulling away from me a little bit. And I'll show you that here as I cross it. So see how he's pulling away from me? Even when I start the lap, and that's because I messed up that turn, so I wasn't carrying enough speed coming through that last turn, so I ended up losing time to him here. But that was absolutely almost as flawless as it gets right there. Just a beautiful turn. And at that point, I was like, dude, I can do this. I know I can beat him here. And then that one, my entry was too bad. And it was just, I messed it up, dude. It's such a choke. I was so mad. But at that point, I realized, okay, I can do this because I know I've been able to keep pace with him because I've been able to keep up, and he hasn't really gained on me too much throughout all these last couple laps. And especially with that first turn, I was like, okay, if I can nail these first couple turns, I should be in good shape. So anyway, it says that we can expect some significant changes. Now this is again going back to the letter from Alan Hartman. So it says, over the weekend we heard loud and clear from the Ultimate Edition owners that they expressing frustration over the VIP membership. We immediately updated the VIP description in the Windows Store to alleviate any future confusion. As the head of the studio, I apologize for any confusion or frustration our players may have experienced. This is just my personal opinion. I've thought this recently. If somebody says, I apologize for this, that's not, I don't consider that an apology, honestly, because it doesn't sound sincere. I mean, it says, as head of the studio, I apologize for any confusion or frustration our players may have experienced. So he's not saying, first of all, I believe he should say I'm sorry, just like other people do. People say, I apologize for this joke that I made that was insensitive. I feel like someone should say I'm sorry. If they're saying I apologize, or like you have my deepest apology, that sounds really insincere to me and very strange. And it sounds like they're being forced to say it. So I personally want to hear someone say, I'm sorry. But he says, as the studio head, I'm sorry. Or he says, the studio head, I apologize for any confusion or frustration our players may have experienced. So he's basically saying, I'm sorry you were confused about the crappy way, I almost just cursed, the crappy way we made this system. And also, I'm sorry, and I just did a quick pause and unpause there. That's what that little hiccup was. And, or frustration. So he's basically saying, I'm also sorry if you got frustrated by our crappy new system. And right there, I double shift. I missed it, and I just double shift. It just, So sometimes it's a weird, like, when you go to shift, sometimes there's a strange delay, and it's not as snappy as I would like it to be. So I hit it, and I don't think it shifts because I don't hear the change right away in the gear, and so I shift again, And I mean, that's how long it takes to shift in some of them. Like, I'm used to, I don't know if it's just a type of car, but I'm so used to just a quick shift, like you hit the button and it shifts. So it's so fast it happens so fast, but also it happens so slow in my mind that it's like shift, wait, okay, what's happening? And then I shift again, and then it double shifts, and I'm just like, wow, dude. Like, it feels like an eternity for me. When you're racing in the moment, it feels like an eternity that the car doesn't shift, because, I mean, you're trying to get every ounce of power you can. So, going back to the letter, going forward, we'll continue to ensure that the Forza 7 VIPs receive the most value for their VIP membership, including experiences. So, starting today, which, again, this is weeks old, which I don't know why it's on the top page of this thing, but you get 4 additional free Forza Edition cars for the VIP members. So, there's a Jaguar F-Type Forza Edition, there's a Chevy Camaro ZL1 from 2017, there's a 2017 Acura NSX, and a 2010 Maserati Gran Turismo S, all Forza Editions. So, they're all Tier 5 Legendary cars, so they'll also add a whole bunch of collector score. And then it's a secondly, and even more significantly, we'll be changing the VIP rewards in Forza 7. The new system will work exactly like it did in Forza 6, offering a 2 times base credit bonus after every race. We've already started work on it, and we'll release it as soon as possible. And then he goes on to talk about stability for the PCs, where they've already realized there's a couple of issues around stability and stuff like that. They've updated a few things, like better support for G-Sync for those of you that use NVIDIA graphics cards. And just a few more support and stability issues. There was a thing with the benchmark where it wasn't quite showing the correct frames per second and a whole bunch of stuff like that. See, so that was a good turn there too. And see, now I'm ahead of the Ghost. And I slid. It's so dumb. But look, I stayed ahead though. And see, look, see how he's pulling on me? That means my shifts aren't exactly right. And also he was carrying slightly more speed when he exited the corner. But now we've sort of stabilized here. And I know I left a lot on the table here because I could just tell by, the fact that this is the best lap that I get here, and when I beat him here at the end, and that was my, that was my thing. And to know also, if you fall behind of somebody, and then you're able to pass them again, that obviously means that you're going faster than whatever their base time was. So, I mean, look how far behind I am from him now. And on top of that, I was able to pass him and beat him at the end. So, and that second corner was an absolute just dumpster fire. So I know I left a ton of time on the table. 3/4 of a second probably was left on the table. So there's definitely room to improve a whole lot more. And I'll link the article in the description. I mean, that's all he said basically. It's just some update stuff. I touched on a few of them yesterday. So, and then of course here I did have to lift off briefly there, which as you see I was catching up to him, and then he started pulling away again because I had to lift off slightly. And I mean, these are just really, like, the thing about the rival racing is it really lets you know the absolutely close, like, we're talking like you lift off the trigger halfway. And here, this is the first time I didn't brake here at this corner. And look how much time I just made up on him. I didn't brake, and I made up all that time. So, this ended up ranking me 46 in the United States, and I think 100 and something in the world. So, it's a pretty good showing for me, and I'm just really glad I got to do it. So, thank you guys. I hadn't planned on talking the whole time, but I found a lot to say. Imagine that. Thank you for being here. Subscribe if you like my content, and check back soon for another video. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.